Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey in your own backyard. I am Rob and Carter here as always. How you doing, Carter?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm excited for tonight's show.
Yeah, we've got a very special guest tonight.
Yeah, he's a special guest. I first saw this gentleman on YouTube and then came to find out that he's had a podcast for a number of years, and shame on me that I wasn't able to track that down and be listening sooner than a couple months ago.
You know, it's crazy. I've actually experienced it a few times with YouTube. Like you find somebody there and you go, "Oh, you've got a podcast too?"
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to welcome Perry from This Is My Bourbon podcast to the show. Perry, how you doing tonight?
Guys, I'm doing great. Thank you all so much for having me on. And of course, you all would find me through my good buddy Matt Porter, whom even before I was able to feature in Matt Madness, he and I had a great, just a really strong, solid connection between us as he was doing his first round of the Old Charter Distillery with large quotes Beagle Rare project in 2019, and it is one of those things where I just can't help but feel like it's a connection that's kind of come full circle, because Matt, was a fan of me before I was a fan of what he did, and then we, mutually just have such a respect for each other and the work that we both put into everything, and a rising tide raises all ships. So
absolutely, yeah.
That things might come back around in one way or another, but it's just awesome. So
correct me if I'm wrong. You and him, you have been primarily for the last few years on the podcast side, the audio side of, I know sometimes we say podcast and people think YouTube too, and I know it's kind of going that direction. But when I say podcast, I'm thinking audio. When I say YouTube, I'm thinking, the video side. And he's been primarily the video guy. I don't think he has a podcast, does he? I know he's been on yours a couple episodes.
Yeah, no. So I have been almost exclusively audio medium focused over the past 3.5 years. I started in October of 2017 with the podcast, and it really wasn't until this year that I started kind of getting the itch to do a little bit something extra, a little bit something more, and started taking a very shallow dive, which sounds extremely dangerous, and I think that's pretty appropriate for the approach that I've taken so far to YouTube content, but trying to do more edited, more produced stuff for the YouTube channel, whether it's reviews or some commentary. I've got some other little ideas that I want to do for sketches, even just goofy little crap that I have kind of in the back of my brain. But I have been mainly audio focused, and one of the things that I've kind of noticed as I've dipped my toes into the water of YouTube is that I'm approaching it as a video editor with a pretty solid background in audio editing. So I'm trying to do something that is very much my own thing with the YouTube content, but still trying to remain true to who I am and the voice that I have as a podcaster, and trying to find a good common ground between the two. But Matt was always just kind of floating around in the hemisphere and saying, I want to do something bigger than me, not just with his reach, but just with his influence that he could potentially have with the bourbon community. And I think that he has been one of the most successful of us over the past year, literally past year.
Yeah.
Year and a half, pretty much, out of just about anybody that's come into the scene. But it's been so cool and so much fun to see what he has done with his channel and with his brand, and just the explosion of support that he's had. But I'm at the point where it feels like I am on the receiving end when he guests on the podcast, that I am suddenly being graced by the presence of ADHD whiskey.
Yeah.
And that he and I get to kind of catch up a little bit, and it's been really cool, and I'm very, very excited for him, and I'm also excited for the YouTube channel.
Well, I would take it a step further and say I think it's exciting for the community, and I almost call it a group. It seems like there's a bunch of you, but and someday maybe we'll be in that circle.
Yeah, I don't know. One day.
But there's several.
I don't see any reason not to.
There's several of you all, and I think I give a lot of credit to Matt. But even before him putting together his tournament, there were so many of you all who had already kind of connected.
I've now competed in 2 rounds of Matt Madness as of recording.
And congratulations on 2 victories.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. There will be a 3rd and hopefully a 4th. It depends on how well I do against Kyle from Bourbon Blind.
Yeah.
Not only is he producing really great content, he is doing it mostly out of a suitcase, and he is also bringing other people into this conversation and into this space under so much stress and duress that in a way that I don't know if I can fully comprehend.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's hard for me to get samples out to people, and that's a menial task compared to organizing when all of these people are going to be on my channel, and when I'm going to have to ship out samples to everybody, and promote it and talk about it and everything. And it's just the work that Matt Porter has put in over the past year and a half has it's just blown me away. And he's it's a weird phrase to use, but he's overcoming adversity in the best way possible, to where he's pretty much living his best life as a content creator in the Whiskey Tube community. And I'm just super proud of him.
Yeah, man. For sure. And I was going to say, talking about sending out samples and all this kind of stuff, we have a hard enough time getting people just to, hang out after offering them dinner and copious amounts of whiskey to be on the show.
Well, and my point in kind of bringing that up was I think it's really cool how you and Matt and even the Bourbon Junkies and we can go on with your friends with Sarah and Chad and Bourbon Bites now, and all of these have kind of, even though they're kind of all over the country, have connected. Now, COVID may have played a part in helping those connections get made, with using things like we're doing tonight with Zoom and things like that, where I think a lot of times in the past it was more of trying to get together in person, but this seems to be a format that works, and it allows us the ease of being able to get together and have a conversation without having to travel or do something like that. So not that I wouldn't want to.
Of course.
I for a long time, and I still prefer this, but I'm so much more comfortable with it since the pandemic. But I wanted to always do interviews in person, and I just wanted to be able to sit down with my interviewee and just have a face-to-face conversation with them. And it's been something that I think as an interviewer, as a content creator, I've kind of struggled with a little bit over the past year, that I haven't been able to do that as much as I wanted to, of course, past year and a half, I guess, for being technical. But I mean, without the advent of, I'm not going to say that it's the advent of the pandemic, because I don't want to give any credit to it, but the advent of trying to figure out how to live our lives digitally, I wouldn't have been able to, back at the beginning of March of last year, we did a day of live streams with a bunch of channels, and without trying to find a way to adjust, I guess, or to kind of shift our mentality and figure out that we can all kind of exist in a space where we don't necessarily have to get together. It's great if we can get together, but if we're just kind of if adversity faces us, then we can kind of figure out ways to do it. That wouldn't have existed. That wouldn't have become a reality. And I wouldn't have been able to interview people like Neil Giraldo of Three Chord Bourbon, who is the husband of Pat Benatar, and his own company. And Jack Maxwell. Jack Maxwell, I don't know if you guys know who he is, but he is the host of Booze Traveler, or was the host of Booze Traveler on the Travel Channel, which for a long time has been one of my favorite shows. It's exactly what it sounds like. He goes all around the world. He drinks their local alcohol, and he experiences the culture along with them, and along with drinking those spirits or those beers or whatever. And he was somebody that I always kind of looked up to in terms of what I would kind of want to do with the content that I created. And eventually it would be like, yeah, maybe I could go to every single state and talk about the bourbon that they might produce there. But, there was a boldness that kind of came out of the pandemic as well, to where I was like, it would be so cool to sit down with this person in face to face, but there's this method for us to basically kind of do the same thing, just not exactly the way that I wanted it to. And it's worked out so well and so comfortably. And I haven't had as much of an issue as I thought I would have, just as things have gone along.
And it was kind of the same for me. I started the podcast Food, Wine, and Whiskey in 2019, just before the pandemic hit. And, it was crazy trying to figure out how I was going to get guests on and talk to them. And then, to your point, it was more of we used Zoom or Teams or whatever at work for whatever meetings we might have. And when the pandemic hit, getting with Carter and other people in our group and being able to go, let's just jump on a Zoom and do a Friday night, happy hour with our wives or whatever, and just shoot the whatever. And
we did that so much, in the very beginning. It was fun.
We drank way too much in the beginning. Yeah.
I mean, what else you have to do?
I'm still kind of, and I've talked about this on the podcast too. It's no secret. But I'm still kind of dealing with the repercussions of, I know how this sounds. It sounds like I'm spiraling and denying alcoholism. But what I'm saying is that I'm still dealing with the after effects of, just drinking so much during a time where you had basically nothing else to do. Right. So, I mean, it was so easy to, I was very fortunate to work from home during most of the pandemic, where there was a few contract jobs here or there or whatnot. But just you hit 2:30 in the afternoon and maybe it's a slow day on a Wednesday and you're like, well, that beer's been sitting there not doing anything for a few weeks. Maybe I'll just crack that one open, or, I haven't had any of this Elijah Craig grenade in a couple of months. Maybe I'll just take a little bit. Oh man, that's actually empty now. Okay, well maybe I should probably slow down a little.
I mean, you're close enough to drive to Bardstown, right?
I'm an hour away from Bardstown, and it always sounds to me like a longer drive than it actually is. But by the time I get to Bardstown from Lexington, I'm like, I should be doing this every single weekend. What is wrong with me? I should be like, but I also, that's also a product, that mindset of second guessing is also a product of the hype and the energy behind the bourbon boom at the moment, where people are, and it was still kind of happening to some degree during the pandemic, whether it was Four Roses having their pickup line where you drive up and you have special pick or whatever, or what have you. People still waiting in line at Buffalo Trace for Bland's, which blows me away. But that's
unbelievable.
It's fine. Do what you want, live your life. Just don't at me.
Well, that gets me to a question for you, Perry, because sure. I know you're 28, and I'll just
I am.
You can probably look at me and tell I'm an old guy. I'm 52. And, back when I was growing up in the 20s, not in the 20s, when I was in my 20s.
In the 20s? Wow, you were looking so good for your age.
Good. I tell my wife that, Perry. I tell her, I tell her, look, honey, tell people you're 60, and they're going to think you look fantastic. Don't tell them you're 50. Add 10 years now. You get to that point where you add 10 years, and you look fantastic. But anyway,
I've been telling people for years that I've been 45. I mean, it's been since I was 13, and they were like, "Why are you in this middle school? And you need to get out of here, sir." But
I went gray at 28, so I mean, it is what it is.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh wow.
I am getting gray right now.
Are you really?
I'm not kidding.
Yeah,
I am. So it started last year, and it started prior to my daughter being born, our first child.
Congratulations on that.
I started. Yeah. Thank you so much. Every time that I say that, it sounds like I'm fishing for a congratulations. I promise I'm not. It's just that I'm so excited about it, and I love being a dad so much that I'm like, hey, it's my first baby. Have we talked? But like, it just, I'm not trying to. I always feel kind of icky when I'm like, oh, hey, this thing happened, man. And it's like, oh, you know what I mean. But anyway,
that's the reason you're recording a podcast so late.
Yes. So I started noticing it first in my beard, and I was like, what is this? Because we have a little white Chihuahua, and I thought that there was a white hair that had gotten stuck in my beard from him. And I went to remove it, to pull it out, and it was hurting me. It was physically causing me pain. And I was like, oh, I have white patches on the neck of my beard. I've got this is so inside baseball. But I've got like white hairs on my chin now. I've got gray streaks through my temples. I'm starting to get white hairs at my hairline as well. It's really strange.
It happens to some of us.
Yeah.
my wife, I'll give her
anyway,
credit.
I'm sorry. What was your question? I
wanted to get to, when I was growing up, we didn't drink bourbon in our 20s. That was kind of either grandpa's drink, or it was, kind of like wine is thought to be a snobby drink. Bourbon back then to me was thought to be that, C-suite executive who had a, crystal decanter and whatever scotch or bourbon in his office and drinking it at home. And, us everyday guys, we didn't partake in that. If I drank wild turkey, it was more for effect, not for... trying to
if you knew now what you
no kidding
or knew then what you know now.
That's 2020.
My question is, where do you obviously you and we've seen it amongst a lot of people we know, this younger generation really and you called it the bourbon boom, getting into bourbon. And it just has never been something that I thought younger people would gravitate to. And I see it with wine as well, which I think is fantastic. And honestly, it makes me jealous, because I wish I could have enjoyed and appreciated it at a younger age and started to build that bunker way back then. I've only been into bourbon really for the last 4 years. And so I've probably not been into it as long as you, Perry.
That's kind of you. I think so. I'm going to approach this from a couple of different angles. I got into bourbon first and foremost because of my dad. So I talk a lot about my dad, whether he's on the podcast or I talk about him in passing, but I'm very fortunate to have a close-knit family. And I'm not saying that other people are unfortunate if they don't, but in my experience, I have found a lot of strength, and I have found a lot of comfort through being able to spend time and special moments and be very close to physically or emotionally my family. And when I was growing up, my dad was primarily a Maker's Mark drinker, and so it was either Maker's or Woodford that was on the counter in the kitchen, as it were. And I just kind of always had this association with, oh, you get older and the alcohol you drink is either beer, wine, or bourbon. Like there was no fourth option. And so and I spent the entirety of my grade school years, I never drank. I never partied. I never, did anything wild. The worst thing that I ever did when I was growing up was I talked back to my parents. And that happened like twice, maybe. I was out late once with my girlfriend, who is now my wife.
Oh wow!
So it all yeah, we were high school sweethearts. So it all kind of it resolved itself very well. But I even like in my first few years of college, I didn't have this desire to go crazy or to I use this term, and I don't mean it maybe in the way that some people might think, but experiment. Like it was never something that I had any desire to get into. And I'll give this is so much further down the rabbit hole than I think your question might have initially implied. But I think the first sip of alcohol I ever had was at Thanksgiving, and my wife, who again was my girlfriend at the time, was like, it's just a little bit of red wine. Like, you'll be okay. I was like, I'll have a little bit. I like sip. And I was like, that's not so
how
bad.
old were you at this point?
I was 20.
Okay. All
Okay.
right.
Maybe 19. Maybe. I mean, I kid you not when I say I was stone cold sober until I got to college. And even then it was like sophomore, junior year before I even started to consider indulging. So past that, it was like, well, I like this, so maybe I'll try other things. And I was like, oh, I like beer. Then, like in specific beers, Sam Adams Oktoberfest was the first beer that I ever remember liking.
Good choice.
One of my favorite beers still to this day, which, by the way, pairs exquisitely with Buffalo Trace. I mean, they were made for each other.
I could see that. I mean, Buffalo Trace has that sweetness to it. It has like kind of that, it's
Cherry.
a cherry kind of holiday kind of note to it, and the Oktoberfest is just a malty Oktoberfest. So I could see that going extremely well together.
Yeah, it really does. And that was a couple years down the line before I discovered that. But I was a wine drinker, not necessarily anything in particular, but just because it was easily attainable or around. Sorry, mom and dad. But then I kind of started venturing into bourbon, and the first time that I didn't really drink bourbon on its own for a while. I drank.
Okay, so that was going to be my question to you. One, did your dad give you your first pour of bourbon? Did he kind of say, "Hey, son, you need to try this"? And two,
no.
Okay, and then two, when I think about people getting into bourbon and drinking it neat, which is, I think we would all agree, when you can drink it that way, you really appreciate what it is more than other ways.
Yeah.
I think most of us have that progression of, we're going to mix it with Coke or something, and it might be more Coke and a little splash of whatever whiskey you're putting in there. And then you kind of graduate to where you got more whiskey and maybe a splash of Coke. And then you finally go, well, maybe I can drink it with a splash of water or an ice cube. And then you finally get to neat. Is that how
that's
you
kind of how I did? And I honestly, not to break up your story here a little bit, but I can relate to you because the reason I started drinking bourbon was mostly because of my dad.
Really?
My dad has always been a bourbon drinker, And I just felt like it was kind of like my go-to liquor because that's what my dad drinks. I don't know. That seems weird, doesn't it? But anyway.
Well, I want to touch on that for a second because my dad growing up. Okay, not my dad when he was growing up. When I was growing up, my dad's preferred drink, and he still, this is his drink as he calls it, is 2 or 3 ounces of bourbon on the rocks with a splash of water.
Okay.
And the first time that I tried that, I thought it was one of the grossest things I'd ever had in my entire life. And I don't know what part of my brain was registering that to where I thought there's a way that I would prefer to drink this other than what I'm drinking it right now. That's not the way I wanted to phrase that. But the point being, I started thinking I want to do something different than what my dad was doing. And same kind of thing, started pretty much bourbon and Cokes, a little bit less Coke, more bourbon. I had this weird kind of middle ground too, where I was drinking anything from Jim Beam honey to American honey from Wild Turkey too, to just kind of, and to be quite honest, I mean, that kind of helped shape my palate towards bourbon as well. And I was able to pick up some of the deeper oak forward aged bourbon notes that were coming forth in this liqueur. And then, once I got to bourbon itself, it didn't feel so abrasive. And for a long time too, I was drinking it on the rocks or with a sphere, a cube or whatever. And then it's very rare now that I drink bourbon on the rocks. My wife always kind of gives me a look or might actually make a comment too when I grab a bourbon on the rocks. But it was a progression for sure by the time I got here.
And I think that's typical, right? That progression there.
Definitely.
And then the progression with proof, really, I think some people get into bourbon and not really understanding what they're drinking. And I did that. My first pour neat, a buddy of mine bought a bottle and said, let's try this. And it was Booker's.
Yeah. Wow. That's your.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I thought I was drinking gasoline, and I went, no thanks.
Oh yeah. Well, I have. It's interesting too.
Begging forgiveness.
Yeah.
I'm going to kind of throw in a different question here.
Okay.
So I call it like. Well, first of all, I have to say, whiskey in general, bourbon is my absolute favorite. We talk about wine, we talk about other spirits. Yeah. But it is my absolute favorite. And my wife can attest to this, that it takes up way too much room all over our house because I have bottles smuggled away everywhere. But what I'll say is I experienced this, and I'm just curious if Perry did as well. It's kind of like a proof curve when you start getting into like neat whiskey. So at first, I was like, okay, this is what I can handle. I can handle a Woodford. I can handle, a basic Jim Beam or something like that. A Wild Turkey 101 was the next step, that kind of thing. And then you start getting into like proofier and proofier stuff, and it's just flavor bombs, and it's like all this kind of thing. And you're like, oh my gosh, why would anybody drink this, 100 proof or less spirit? And now I have a real appreciation of what I call the sweet spot in bourbon, which is 100 to 120 proof. That is like where I want to live. And I don't know if you had a similar kind of thing go on with you. I mean, but that's kind of how it happened with me.
Well, see, here's the thing. I am an extreme proof hound. But I don't disagree with you. Anything from 1 to 120 is easily my sweet spot. And it might get me into a little bit of trouble on any given day, but I mean, I'm not shy about starting off the evening with a pour rare breed, as opposed to 101 or Buffalo Trace or Heaven Hill Green Label or whatever it is. But I find, and I've actually got a video coming out about this soon. Hopefully I can battle my computer long enough to feel like I can put out a good video. That's the other thing too. Technology sucks. And it just, I sometimes just want to throw it right out the window and snap my fingers and make it happen. But you know, it's just a nightmare sometimes. Anyway, I have a video coming out. It's the first in a series on why a particular bourbon is the best value on the market, and the first one is rare breed. And so it's a pretty heavy bourbon to talk about first, right out of the gate, because of course it is a barrel proof expression of it's something that we either hated in college or didn't discover until later in life. And you know, I use that in particular because that was really my experience. But I'm in the same boat where I started low proof, and I kind of worked my way up. The first time I had Bakers and Bookers, I couldn't stand them. I couldn't understand why anybody would drink something as high proof as Booker's. I thought that it was just disgusting. And I wanted to throw up all over myself.
I remember my first bottle of Booker's, and it was a gift to me when I wasn't really like, I was into bourbon, but I wasn't like really knowledgeable about what I liked yet. I started mixing it with Coke just to get rid of it, you know.
So in that same vein, my co-host Swan, my now co-host, he was kind of a guest when we first started the show. But when he and I both kind of got into bourbon semi-seriously around the same time, and he had bought a bottle of Booker's Blue Knights batch that he didn't really like, but he just kind of powered through it. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, and it's so unfortunate because he now craves this bourbon and loves this bourbon so much and considers it to be his favorite. But he gave me a bottle of Old Label Elijah Craig Barrel Proof.
Oh, yeah.
Because he just could not deal with it. And there are not many bottles that I regret drinking through as quickly as I did that bottle. But here I stand for sit, and just I wish that I had preserved that bottle for longer than I had. And even then, I mean, it was like 136 proof. It was, you know, nothing to sniff at.
Do you know which batch it was?
If it's 136, it had to be batch 12.
Yeah, this was in 2016, 2017.
Okay. I don't know when they were released first.
I have batch 12, and it's 136.
Oh, okay.
The old pirate label.
Yeah.
Okay, so that probably is it, actually.
You've got a little of that left.
I got about almost half a bottle.
Oh, baby.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to send Perry a little sample.
Yeah,
so
just a nostalgia.
Bring the memories back. Yeah.
I'm not upset about that. Here's the thing. I'm a tit for tat person for sure, and we'll send a flight or some samples your way as well in response.
Not necessary. Believe me.
I know it's not necessary, but that's part of the community, man.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the whole thing. So I'll talk about this real quick. This as of recording, this hasn't come out yet, but Swan basically texted me on Sunday. We hadn't seen each other in a while. We hadn't recorded in a while, and I'd been kind of scrounging for content. And I say that like people weren't excited or interested in doing it. They were. I had a great time recording some content, but he came over and said he had this pick of Knob Creek Single Barrel, and it was gifted to him from one of our listeners. And I looked at the bottle and I was like, Swan, I pick this?
Oh my
Like
gosh.
I wasn't even thinking about this, and then I looked at the date and I was like, oh, that's around the time that I helped pick this for OBC. And I was like, oh no, this was when I picked this for OBC. This was the exact date.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I mean, I it's one of those things where I've kind of rediscovered how much I love this pick and how much I loved doing that pick as well. So I'm gonna there's still some available at OBC, so I'm gonna grab a bottle and send you guys something out of that, and maybe something else a little special.
Well, here's the thing, right? And this is the crying shame about it. I'm a huge Knob Creek pick fan. Like
so
I'm a just, and I kind of we had a podcast not too long ago talking about this. And we did a bunch of Knob Creek
12-year, 14-year-old picks, that you could get
15,
ago.
like different stuff. And we did like a lot of blinds. And I was like, man, why am I not drinking more of this?
We think Knob Creek is under the radar. I mean, people don't appreciate it it's just fantastic. I even like the 9-year 100 proof.
Yeah,
I think it's fantastic pour for $32 or whatever it is.
I don't know if I've ever talked about this on my podcast at the very least. I've made social media posts about it over the past couple of years, but I'm a musician as well.
Carter is as well.
Hey, me too.
Hey, what up, Carter? I play guitar mainly. I have a pretty deep-seated love of the blues, and I was actually in a country-ish band for a little while, and I met one of my best friends while I was playing in that band. His name is Billy. He was playing bass for him at the time when I came in. We both, due to different circumstances, basically left the band on the same day, despite the fact that we had an incredible time performing almost across the entire southern United States, southeastern United States. And he and I continued to be good friends after that, played in another band together for a while. He actually passed away in 2017 of a heart attack.
Oh, wow.
And he was young. He was about the age that I am now.
Oh, man.
When he passed away. And one of my fondest memories of hanging out with Billy was we were in Nashville, and we were sitting around a very sad little fire pit in the backyard of an Airbnb. And it was my very first bottle of it too. Bought some age-stated 9-year Knob Creek 100 proof. Back when it was that old newspaper looking label. And so every year on his birthday and on the anniversary of his passing, I drink nothing but Knob Creek, whether it's the small batch or single barrels. But I have such a soft spot in my heart for Knob Creek, whether it's because I love it because it's a great bourbon or because I have sentimental attachment to it. But it's just such a great bourbon.
It really is.
I mean, like, I don't even really I know I've been all sentimental, but I hate to, I'm breaking the tension with just like, it's just so good. Like,
okay.
What do you want me to say?
So like, I did not know that I liked Knob Creek. I really didn't. This was a few years ago. I did the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, like a total, tater, like when I first got into, into this thing. And to me, the best distillery experience that I had was at Jim Beam. And I thought it was great. I was like, the campus is awesome. Like, you did the whole thing where you're tasting out of the barrel. And it was like, it was cool,
Yeah.
And then I was like, what are these guys all about? Let me just start trying this stuff, And yeah, I mean, you you quickly learn actually that Knob Creek is a total hitter, badass bourbon. You know?
for sure. And what's funny too is that I actually have a pretty sweet affection for Jim Beam White Label. I mean, it's not anything
bad.
that I reach for regularly, but it still holds up so well as a 4-year-old 80 proof bourbon. I mean, there's a reason that it's so popular, as popular as it is.
What was that? Shoot, Jim Beam that we tried recently that like we blinded, and I was like, "What the heck is this?"
You're talking about the Jim Beam. I'm gonna grab it.
Yeah. Well. Anyway, let's just say, like, fortunately, we're in the bar. But I was like, holy crap! And then he's like, "Do you have a guess what it is?" And I was like, "Because you had an Old Forester." Yeah, I had an Old Forester and a Baker's 7 right there. And
okay.
And so it was similar. Well, not similar with Old Forester, but like similar with two like Jim Beam and more in the same proof range. And he tells me it's a screw top bottle. He just messed with my mind. I was like,
was it the single barrel, the 108 proof?
I think so. Yeah, the single barrel 108.
Gosh.
Dude, what the heck is that? Like, that is ridiculous. It's so good.
I stopped digging, but you nailed it. That's exactly what it was. 108 proof. Yeah.
I was such a fan of that bottle the first time that I tried it. And I was, truth be told, really surprised by the fact that it was even on the shelf, because there was always that 95 proof single barrel that was hanging around that was used for actual single barrel selections too. And I was about to record an episode with Chad from It's Bourbon Night, and I just picked a bottle of that 108 proof up. And I think I forget about that bottle so often.
It's
forgettable. I mean, if you look at the bottle, and
it absolutely is.
I'm a big It's a Cool Bottle fan.
Yeah, that's Carter's call sign. That's a cool bottle.
But like, that is not a cool bottle. But it is damn good.
It's now become when we have buddies over who are, into bourbon, say, it's mine that I like to mix in with the blind because it always seems to come out first or second, and they're blown away when I first show them that screw top on it, and they're like, "What the hell is that?" But no, it's fantastic, and I think Jim Beam in general, some of the things. I'm a big Baker's fan. I think Baker's 7-year goes way under the radar as well as far as appreciation from bourbon groups and bourbon aficionados.
It's that plastic cork that they put there.
Yeah,
that plastic
they could do the
top
top
they put on that
better,
new bottle. They just ruined it.
Yeah.
See,
but
I loved Baker's when it was Baby Bookers. It was just kind of the proof down version of what everybody else was drinking that kind of made you feel like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through the rest of the night, guys. I'll have another drink. But I loved the Baker's 107 7-year-old age stated in that. I mean, it was the same.
That was a small batch.
Yeah,
the small batch. Yeah. It was the same bottle as Booker's, and
right.
Like I said, when I first tried that and I first tried Booker's, both of them were actually on a cruise, and probably not the best place to try either of those bourbons, and I did not like either of them.
Yeah.
So
if only you knew, you could have gotten all that Blanton straight from the barrel on that cruise.
Oh, what a shame!
I will tell you that when it comes to Baker's, the new single barrel 7-year, I will say that I have tried probably 5 to 6 bottles of things that are 7 years. Let's say it this way, 7 years, 11 months or less, 7 years to 7 years, 11 months. And I've not been a fan of those, but you get to 8 years, 8 year, 2 months. I've had an 8 year, 6 month, an 8 year, 7 month. those have all been just huge hitters for me that I've absolutely enjoyed, and I don't know why that is.
That recent single barrel, the 8 year, 6 month or
6 and 7 months per.
Oh my gosh, dude, that was a great single barrel. I know people got mad because the price went up and all that kind of stuff, but it was good.
Yeah, so it's been a conversation that we've had a lot over the past couple of years, and it's the argument between whether or not I would pick up a Knob Creek pick at 120 proof, basically about 9 years for $45 to $55, or would I pay a low end premium price for a bottle of Booker's, which at this point is not really breaking the 7-year mark and is not getting above 130 proof. So I am of the mindset that I think that Knob Creek at face value is the better value. That being said, there's still older Jim Beam juice in the Booker's batches and the Booker's releases, and I still kind of want to buy into the light hype that is Booker's, because it was one of my earliest barrel proof purchases, and I don't know, man. It's such a weird time in the market where everybody's doing a really good job of balancing proof and age, or price and proof, or price and age, and there's some great things on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of age that might be a little bit more expensive, and vice versa. But it's getting to the point where I'm just kind of like, if I like it, I like it. I'm really tired of trying to justify something like that.
No, I'm with you, and I will say Booker's in the Jim Beam line is probably the one I'm not a huge fan of. I have a few of them, but each one I've opened, I'm a bigger Knob Creek fan.
The last one that I really liked was Country Ham. I
loved Country Ham.
Now that one I really liked, but subsequent batches, there's been some that are kind of like, yeah, they're good. I don't know, but the thing that bothers me, and I don't mean to turn this into a Knob Creek conversation or anything.
No, let's have it. Let's do it. It's important.
But
it's important to us. I guess.
Yeah. But the fact that they're doing away with store picks altogether, I mean, that bothers me, man.
Huh? What?
Yeah.
What? Excuse me. Are you kidding me?
I think that's actually true.
I thought they were just doing away with the 14-year and 15 years.
I heard recently now, and this is rumor, Bill, all the way, but that they may be doing away with Knob Creek single barrel picks altogether. Yes, I know. I was very perplexed myself when I heard that.
Pardon?
Yeah, if they do that, I'm going to be very upset.
I kind of regret doing this now that I have to hear that comment.
I hope it's not true.
I'm kidding. I promise. I'm kidding.
We'll edit that part out so you won't have to.
No. I hope this isn't the case. But I mean, this is a rumor that's kind of spun around Houston a little bit.
Yeah, I've heard the 14, 15-year picks that we'd seen and then they came out with their own 15-year and they're charging $100 for it.
Yeah, that was kind of. I think that was. And maybe that led people to conclusions or whatever. But like, I will say this, like the fact that they're not doing 15-year picks anymore, I get it from a perspective of money making. But at the same time, I'm like, man, those were some of the best values on the shelf. I mean, just unbelievable. And now I'm sad I drank through so many of them.
Yeah, me too. I'll come at this from a couple of different approaches. My very first pick, again, I think I said this earlier, but my very first pick that I ever was able to go on was a Knob Creek pick, and it was 13 and a half years old, I think, 13 years old,
Nice.
and came out of the barrel at 121 proof.
Oh, wow.
So all they had to add was like a gallon of water.
That's
to bring
amazing.
it down to 120. And when I was able to pick a bottle of it up, it was through Liquor Barn here in Kentucky. When I was able to actually purchase a bottle of it, it tasted exactly like it did when we picked it. And it was one of the most surreal experiences to this day that I've had with bourbon. And especially something that, you know, I was like, it's going to change a bunch. And, you know, it's the same thing. And I mean, it was just perfect. And I almost, that is still my favorite Knob Creek pick that I've ever had. And I hate that it's something that I picked because it makes me sound really, really selfish.
Not at all.
Hey, I'm proud of all the picks that I've done too, and some of them aren't as good as others because you're only
sure.
You know, it's the barrels that are rolled out in front of you, and you just pick the best
all killer,
one.
no filler, man.
Yeah.
But the other side of that though is that I was upset when they discontinued, quote unquote, the older Knob Creek picks, and they kind of capped everything at about 9 or 10 years old. But my best bourbon of 2020 was Knob Creek 12-year cast strength. So for me, it was worth it because I was able to experience a bourbon that I, in some ways, kind of wanted my entire bourbon drinking life. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, because I always loved Knob Creek. I always loved that Booker's Profile, but there was something missing a little bit from it. And it turns out that it was the oakiness of being almost twice as old as a Booker's actually was. And, you know, just an incredible product all around. So I in a lot of ways can justify why it was okay for them to get rid of those picks, but at the same time, I really miss walking into Liquor Barn or Total Wine and picking up a 13 to 15-year-old single barrel, almost 16-year-old single barrel.
It's so cool. Like
$60.
I had this experience, like, I don't know, last year. You know, Total Wine, it's got, I walk into the one in the Woodlands, it's just north of Houston. And they've got just stacks and stacks of a 15-year pick. And I'm like texting my friends. I'm like, hey, do you guys want a bottle? Like, I mean, I'm just sitting here in front of a tower of it, you know, and people are like, no, I'll pass. You know, I've got enough Knob Creek picks or something. And I'm like, dude, you missed out big time. But anyway,
you know, that kind of goes back to something that I was going to say about my dad earlier. He always instilled this notion of you can't be upset over the things that you don't have, right? And there's a truth to be spoken about that from a place of privilege, I think, and that privilege for the most part is hindsight. But at the same time, it's really hard not to go, I really wish that I had bought an entire case of that pick that I loved, or, you know, but it's all circumstantial. It's all the fact that, you know, you're not able to make things happen when you're supposed to. And, you know, it's unfortunate, but shoot, man, I've had some great 9-year-old, 10-year-old Knob Creek picks over the past year that I don't regret picking up. Sure, it would be great to have a 13 to 16-year-old pick, but at 9 years and they're still killing it, I'm perfectly happy. Perfectly fine with it.
Yeah, they're still great. I thought it was always kind of a thrill, you know, like, wow, a 15-year-old pick for $35 or like whatever, you know. It's like, holy crap. And I just
$65, right?
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, for the new one is like $100.
Oh, the 15-year
new one.
But
new
the 15-year picks were about $65, weren't they?
Oh, I think they were less. They were 60. I thought they were like in that Well, I guess not.
No, they were about 65 around here, 60,
Are
65.
you guys are just agreeing with each other, but sounds like an argument.
Yeah, I don't know a lot. I don't know. I could
Sounds
be
like
wrong.
we're married, Perry.
Hey, hey, you know what? I just haven't bought one in a long time, so I guess I'm just thinking it's the same price as the 100 proof 9-year, but it's not.
Okay, here's a question for you, Perry. I love, obviously, the name of the podcast, Food, Wine, and Whiskey. I love food. I like to eat it. I like to cook it.
I think I might know where this is going, but go for it.
I bet I'm going to get you off here, but I'll probably get to what you think it's going to be. Yeah, that's what she said.
Yeah, where's that button?
Wine really is my first passion and love, and it kind of is what got me into whiskey. There's a lot of similarities in what you appreciate and like about wine and different varietals or different, aging in the barrel and different things like that you can get some of those things from. And it kind of helped me transition into drinking whiskey neat and appreciating what's in the bottle, what's in the glass. For me, there's not really a distiller that I don't like their profile. I really appreciate what all of them are doing and trying to do. So I'm not like one of those guys that might be sitting to the left at me that doesn't like turkey juice.
Sure.
So is there any profile?
I know, that's in accord with Barry here because he's a turkey guy.
Is there a profile? I mean, do you appreciate what, most of the big whiskeys and what they're, the big distillers and what they're doing? Or do you kind of like, there's certain profiles I like. There's ones that, I'll drink it, but it's not my favorite.
As far as big distillers go,
and before you answer, I want to follow up with, you got to give us your 2 favorites distillers.
Oh, snap. Okay.
Putting you on the spot here.
Let me talk about the things I don't like first, because
Okay.
I think that's I need to redeem myself afterwards. I have never been, and I continue to not be a fan of the Willet profile.
All Willet?
Don't.
Even the rye?
No. Well, okay. Willet rye, I think, is good. Most of the Willet rye that I have had, and I think most of the Willet rye that everybody has, is sourced. Their bourbon is like stale peanut butter to me. I'm gonna get myself in so much trouble
Not at all.
people they love it. It's so unfortunate because Willet is such a pay to play distillery and a pay to play product because it's just so expensive, and I don't get it. But I cannot get on board with the overall flavor profile for Willet, and that's even extending down into like the old Bardstown Estate and the Bottle and Bond,
Rowan's Creek, or any of those kind of things either?
The one that I actually like, there's Rowan's Creek, and there's, what's the other one?
Oh man.
Similar bottle.
Yes.
Noah's Mill.
Noah's Mill, yeah.
I like Noah's Mill. I think Noah's Mill hits me in the right way in terms of the peanut butter flavor profile, but Rowan's Creek is a little bit on the astringent side.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to people who love Willet. But like Pure Kentucky XO and like those products, Johnny Drum, I don't even really like that much.
I've never had a Johnny Drum.
I don't really like the Willet profile either. I mean, like I said, I'm a cool bottle guy. And the Willet pot still is so disgusting. I can't stand it. I'll be just flat out and say it. But that is a cool bottle.
Yes, and yes. I mean, like it's not a good whiskey. And but I mean, yeah, the bottle itself is so cool. I can't bring myself to buy a bottle for a display piece anymore that I'm going to hate if I open it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I would rather get, and this is definitely inside baseball, but I would rather buy a bottle that I don't like and I can make content out of than have a bottle that I don't like and have it just sit around and be a centerpiece or a talking piece for people.
I mean, in all fairness, I don't own one, but I do think the bottle looks cool. But okay, so Willet is one. Is there another one that comes to mind?
I'm gonna say this one, and I, to be fair, have not had what they are doing now. But OZ Tyler has always been just awful to me. Their rye actually was not that bad. Their bourbon was just hot garbage. And now they're the Green River Distilling Company, I think, and that was in tribute to their old moniker before Prohibition shut them down. I'm pretty sure it's Green River.
Okay,
I might be wrong, but they are in Owensboro, Kentucky.
Did they make for another brand, Green River?
Yeah. So OZ Tyler actually, and I'm referring to them as OZ Tyler because that's the contract distillery name, I guess, that they've used over the past few years. Yeah, they did contract distill for some companies that wanted to have a hyper-aged bourbon or a Terra Pure bourbon, which is what OZ Tyler was.
Yeah.
/is. It's fine. I should probably not talk too much about it. Because here's the thing. I really want to... I think there's only been one place on the Bourbon Trail that I have not actually been to. Okay, maybe two. And one place that I've not had since their new rebranding, and that's Green River or OZ Tyler.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say I would like to try what their product is like now. It might not be great, but yeah, I hate to say that OZ Tyler, as it used to be, is in my top or bottom two, however you want to actually describe it. But between that and Willet, it's just not my favorite.
Now, okay, I know we're running kind of long here, but I do want to throw it over to Rob and get his opinion on this thing, because I don't know that I know a distillery that you don't like. And how much bourbon and whiskey have we talked about?
Yeah, well, to be fair, I have.
Can I jump? I want to jump in for just a hot second, though.
Go ahead.
There are two sides to this. There are distilleries that I don't like, and I won't talk about.
Okay.
And there are distilleries that I do like, and I will talk about in the sense of this is not for me.
Sure.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, there is a fine line between what I should be saying and what I want to say.
I understood. And
I should have been more clear because, as we know, there's a lot of distilleries now, outside of Kentucky and all over that I haven't tried and maybe you haven't tried. But I was speaking more to the bigger ones that we think about, whether it's Old Forester, whether it's Wild Turkey, Jim Beam, Four Roses, things like that. Is there one of those that, you're just not a big fan of what they're doing or their profile? I'm a fan of all of them. Have I had things that I don't like? Yeah, but it's not on the scale of, it's more that craft style kind of distillery that's doing things. Everything else, I try to put myself into what are they trying to accomplish? What are they trying to produce? What are they trying to get me to enjoy in this bottle? And can I kind of extract, that out of what I'm drinking and appreciate what they're trying to do? So that's kind of how I approach it, kind of similar to wine.
that's something that I think I spent a lot of time not internally monologuing with, but just kind of understanding that things are not as clear cut as a lot of people assume they are. But Wilderness Trail, that is a distillery that came out swinging with a 4-year-old wheated bourbon at bottled and bond 100 proof, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I still have such an affinity for that product. I still, I mean, you know, Rebel 100 is another good example in that case, but that's a product I think of a long time of innovation and deliberation and whatnot. But Wilderness Trail, man, just absolutely blew me away with their first run at a product.
I haven't had that yet, but I will tell you there's two bourbons that you, listening to a couple of your episodes, I want to try now, and I've been meaning to, and I was hoping to get a bottle before we actually recorded this, but Wilderness Trail was one of them because it's on your list of 2 distilleries that look out. In the next few years, they're going to be doing some good things. What was the other one that you have on your...
New Riff,
which is also a new favorite of mine, and I'm so disappointed and frustrated that in Texas we can't get that. It's not distributed here.
You get it at Specs occasionally.
It's weird that Texas doesn't have New Riff.
I've never seen New Riff in Texas.
I have, but it's gone almost immediately. Like
You're
it's
not
like
thinking about
allocated.
Smoke Wagon.
No, New Riff. Yeah, you can get it here.
Do you guys need me to send you a bottle or two? Or
I mean, just, you know,
is there? I mean, you're in Kentucky. I don't know that there's anything we can send you that you don't get.
Well, apparently, I mean, after listening,
you can send me so much Weller Special Reserve that I'm going to be drowning in it. Apparently,
we can.
I also don't want any more.
It's like okay, so that is a weird thing between state to state, and I know, like, you know, it's a constant topic, but like we don't get Eagle Rare here at all, hardly. I mean, it'll drop and it's gone. You know,
it's not on the shelf. We can get it.
You can get it, but it's generally not on the shelf. Weller Special Reserve. All day long, anywhere you want.
So weird.
It's like liters
so
are sitting on the shelf. You know, it's like it's ridiculous.
$34.
Now, one misconception about Texas I will correct is that everybody thinks, oh, you get just oceans of Weller 12 down there. That is not correct. What happens is there are occasional drops that happen in Texas where you can get it.
Okay,
but it's not like
twice a year.
Yeah, it's like twice a year, and it's not like oceans and oceans of it. Like, oh man, it just sits on the shelf and collects dust. Nah, not that. But I will say this: I see Weller 1012 more than I see Weller 107. Like, I don't ever see Weller 107 on the shelves ever.
Yeah, that's a tougher one to get actually than Weller 12.
Anyway, I don't know why we're talking about this, but you know, I just thought I'd throw it out there.
At this point, it's just like, what are we doing here?
Yeah,
no kidding.
I know.
Shame on me. I'm not really directing the conversation well, am I?
Yeah. Well,
man, that's my favorite portion of any just kind of conversational bourbon podcast. Is it's like, what are we supposed to be doing here right now?
Yeah, you know, we're getting to know each other. That's what we're doing. and actually,
what's okay? If you could ask me any question, what would it be?
Oh gosh, what you got?
No, you go first.
All right. No, I can't do it. I can't do it. I want to.
You're going to ask me who my worst guest is?
Yes.
I was going to ask you.
You can just say Carter.
Right, that I'm not going to answer.
We're coming to Louisville to pick 5 or 6 barrels in August.
Yeah, we are.
So, what's 2 or 3 of the best?
Oh, snap!
2 or 3 of the best strip bars.
Oh,
do they have those
I definitely
there?
cannot answer.
I'm kidding.
You remember that part of my story where I said that I spent the majority of my life sober. I've also spent all of my life not going to strip bars.
Same here. I was just trying to be funny. I don't know how that played out.
Y'all are really missing out.
But no, on a serious note, Carter and I are coming to Louisville in August, and we're picking several barrels. Four Roses is one of them. We're excited that we get to pick what I think will be one of the first Elijah Craig barrel proofs. So we get to do one of those.
Yeah.
And so we may have to pick your brain on, things to do or things that, Carter's been a couple of times. I've picked barrels, but it's always been sample sent. I've never been on site. So I'm really looking forward to hitting up Buffalo Trace and Four Roses and Old Forester and all these and doing some fun picks.
Yeah.
But the nightlife and things that we might want to see or do, you might be able to steer us in the right direction.
Yeah. I think we're staying in Louisville.
We're staying in Louisville. But I will tell you, you had on a guest of yours recently who has a restaurant. One is the Beaumont, and one is the other restaurant. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the Beaumont Inn is Dixon Dedman, who is of Kentucky Owl fame. That's in Harrodsburg. But Dexter Murray, who is one of my oldest friends, I would say, is part of the family that owns the Merrick Inn here in Lexington. All right. I'm going to go ahead and extend this. Y'all come to Lexington, we'll restaurant/bar hop and go between Merrick and OBC. They are literally right across the street from each other.
Nice.
I mean, they are right there. So when you're here, let me know, and we'll have a good time.
Oh, excellent, man!
We appreciate that.
We do appreciate
Absolutely.
that. Yeah, we're this is Rob's first trip up, so I'm pretty excited.
Crazy.
Yeah, never been. So it'll be my first trip to the Kentucky bourbon trip.
I know, man. We hopefully like they roll out the best barrels.
Yeah, I mean Carter was part of picking.
We could do an entire other episode about what it's like to go on a barrel pick.
Oh,
yeah. That's an episode that we want to do because, I think it's a fun topic that a lot of listeners don't really kind of understand what that is. And I'd be one of them. I have a little intel, but not as much.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and some are better experiences than others, in my opinion. But
yes, they are.
And we're lucky enough to do Four Roses, which I'll just kind of hint at here, is one of my favorite experiences when picking barrels. So
can confirm.
Yeah, Carter was part of a group that picked just a badass OESO from them that was just fantastic. And you picked an OBSO that was just recently released that was fantastic.
Yeah. So pretty proud of that, but whatever.
Yeah, no big deal.
Yeah,
no big deal.
yeah.
Okay, so I got to ask you the question, Perry. Obviously the title of the podcast for us is Food, Wine, and Whiskey, because I love all three, and I think they don't need to be excluded, from each other. They kind of go together. I'll tell you that when I'm cooking food at the house, I'm sipping on bourbon, and then when I'm eating the food I cooked, I'm drinking a little wine. Do either of those two, the food and wine, are they part of your life? Are they part of things that you enjoy?
Yes. So I kind of touched on it slightly earlier in the episode, but wine is what I kind of cut my teeth on as far as distilled spirits goes. And I might even be wrong in the terminology there, but doesn't matter. We're very in the bourbon at this point.
Yeah.
But I still have such an affinity for wine, man. I constantly debate whether or not I'm going to eat a piece of steak and drink wine or whiskey with it. That being said, I I tend to lean towards bourbon or whiskey when I'm eating a piece of red meat. But I just had tonight that my wife cooked up an incredible filet mignon that we paired with a Bordeaux. And
Nice.
It was man.
Wild. It was wild. Like the Bordeaux was a little bit dry. But my wife does a reverse sear that keeps the juiciness of the steak. And it's a good pairing between the two.
Absolutely. And I agree with your wife. I will do a reverse sear or I will do a sous vide. That's the only way I will cook my steaks.
Same.
We have not done a sous vide yet. We need to so badly.
Make the investment and you'll get a perfect steak every time.
I'm so about it, man. I'm so about it.
The other type of protein that cooks really well is chicken.
Yeah,
it does. That chicken is a fine line of being undercooked versus overcooked. A sous vide, it is just mouthwatering every time.
Yeah.
So sous vides you can call it a crutch, but it's a crutch I'll lean on all day long.
Hey, so are pellet grills, right?
Yeah.
Who cares if it's a crutch?
Absolutely.
I mean, if you're making something that is high quality and it's something that you enjoy, why should you feel like, oh, I'm not doing it the way that other people think I should be doing it?
Yeah, I agree.
Shut up, other people. Like, just enjoy what you're being given.
That's right. I won't invite you back to my house next time.
Yeah, okay. If you don't like the way I prepare the food.
That's Carter every time he comes over. He's like, oh, Rob, why are you giving me a piece of steak that's been sous vide?
I'm like, did you soak it in wild turkey? Jeez.
Sous vide with some whiskey. Okay,
Exactly.
Boozy steak.
No, I always wonder, I enjoy the whiskey world. I really do. And, I always see, you and Matt and obviously Bourbon Junkies and everybody who's in that community. And I always want to ask them because I got to think they're into some wine or they're into Armagnac or they're into, foods and not just eating. We all eat food, but I mean, wanting to really cook at home and do some stuff and enjoy a cool little restaurant that's unique and different.
If the bourbons and the ryes of the world disappeared, my next preference would be Armagnac.
Yeah.
I think Armagnac is the most it is one of the most exquisite distilled spirits I have ever had. And it is, as I've said over the past couple of years, if bourbon were a wine.
Yeah,
it's an Armagnac. Yeah. I'm breaking into that world. We've been kind of exploring a little bit more Armagnac and even cognac for that matter. I do enjoy a cognac as well.
Same. And I've really gotten into the Foursquare rum, like some of those kind of incredible barrel proof rums that are just awesome. You go, whoa, that's a rum? Like, holy crap, this is amazing. This is complex, sure. But anyway, well, I think we've been hammering on for an hour and a half here.
Well, Perry, we've enjoyed the conversation, but before we go, let everybody know where they can find you, obviously on your podcast, where you're at and what you're doing and how they can follow you and participate, as far as Patreon and things like that.
Well, Rob and Carter, I first want to say so much thank you for allowing me to come in and hang out with you guys for a little while. This was so much fun. I don't normally get to just drink bourbon and talk about bourbon in a podcast space like we did tonight. And I am always down if you guys need somebody to hop in because this is just what I love to do. But if you want to hear more about the bourbon in general, you can follow the podcast itself at This Is My Bourbon Podcast or at My Bourbon Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can find all of our apparel and merchandise at bourbonshop.threadlist.com. You can send us questions or comments to thisismybourbonshop@gmail.com. And you can become a supporter of the show at patreon.com/McBourbonPodcast for as little as $1 a month. And for as little as $5 a month, you get bonus content, including the pregame chats, which come out before every episode, and early access to YouTube videos. I also have a new thing that I'm going to be doing just for Patreon coming up here soon. So stay tuned for that. This is actually the first time I've talked about it. So it's a little bit of an exclusive, I guess, for the
nice. We're glad that we're honored that it's breaking here. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, man.
So that's it for me. Thank you all so much for having me on this week.
No, man, we really appreciate it. And like we said, we'll be sending some things in the mail. We'd love for you to come back on. I mean, there's just so many directions we can go in conversation when we're talking about these things, and absolutely enjoyed the conversation with you tonight.
Looking forward to seeing you in about a month and a half.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We're doing it.
And we're planning on doing a little filming out there, if you don't mind being on film, because we're shooting off
Don't mind at all.
We're doing our YouTube
Just let me
channel.
know so I can shower.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks everybody for listening to this episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey in your own backyard. And until our next episode, enjoy your next pour.